This January of 2018, we started a webinar series here in North Carolina, and the first webinar that we created regarding NC Star was basically titled "Created a Plan, What Next?" It's probably one of the biggest questions we get from schools in our state that are using NC Star. It's basically, I've tackled those 12 key indicators, I have a plan in place, what do I do next in the system? So the webinar was well received, so we've decided to record this video and add it to the Weebly and our YouTube channel. So let's go into the system and show you exactly how this would work in a school. So as we've all become accustomed to, we would go to industar.org, and that should take you to ADI's website where we will log in. And I'm going to log in as one of the fake schools that we constantly use in all these videos. And there we go. So if you're a school that's already created a plan, you've become very familiar with all these boxes: our direction, our meeting, success cycle, our progress. But today we're mainly focusing about the plan. So we're going to stick to the success cycle area. So I'm going to go in there and look at our indicators that we've placed into our plan. I like to call the success cycle area the workstation of NC Star, because this is really where you do most of the work. So here are all my indicators that are in my plan. I've done exactly what we ask in North Carolina, which is tackle the 12 key indicators first. Most schools do that very well. And I know these are all key indicators because they have the little key icon next to them, and I can see that there's a count of 12 right up here. So immediately when I get to this page, most schools should right away tackle anything that had the little red warning icon, because that is telling me that there's something that is past due. Whether the objective itself is past due or there's an action step in there that's past due, that's what that tells me. So if I go ahead, and I seem to have 2 of those red warning signs, yes. If I go ahead and click on, for example, A416, I'm going to now get into the A416 work that we have typed into the plan. So here's that initial assessment, that description of the current implementation. I do like to remind people that when you are describing the current implementation, it's always a good technique to write the year you're describing. And the reason for that is because if you are using this system for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and you assess this in, for example, in this case, I assessed this in 2017, and I'm looking at the plan and reading it in 2019, I need to make sure that what I'm reading here is not actual 2019 information. Now, I do know of schools that like to keep the public informed, and they like to actually update this every year. So they'll actually add, not delete, but they'll add in 2018 this so-and-so happened, in 2019, so on, so that everyone's aware of the current implementation efforts. But that is not necessary, since this is describing the implementation efforts when the assessment took place. And remember, this is an initial assessment. So with that said, I'm going to keep scrolling down. We as a team basically selected, in this case, Melissa McCarthy to be responsible for this indicator. We gave it a due date of June 8th of this year, the end of the school year. But with that said, I just wanted to show you why the warning sign comes up. I have these 2 action steps. I notice here one of them is past due because this was about 2 months ago. What happens here is Melissa needs to go ahead and talk to Fen in this case about that action step, because Fen is not part of the school improvement team. Melissa is. Melissa is our point on this indicator. And she will have the conversation with him about how are we doing with action step number 1. Fen might say, oh yeah, I did that. That was done with that in October. And then Melissa can actually bring that to the team. Fen would give her any evidence pieces to show us. And then we would all decide as a team, yeah, Fen did phenomenal work with that. We can go ahead together and mark that as completed. When you do that, you can backdate this. So if Fen had said that, yeah, he completed this October 12th, you can go ahead and do that. And if I go back to my success cycle, and I can do it right here on the left-hand side on the navigation bar on the left, it will automatically remove, right here, A416, it automatically removed that warning sign that was there. Now, I do also notice that there were 2 action steps, and it's now telling me that 50% have been completed. So that's how I'm reading all of this. It hasn't been marked completed yet. Now, let me go ahead and fix A107 before we keep going with other parts of this. And again, it was initially assessed in the 17-18 school year, so as of 2017, that was what was happening in the school. Justin Timberlake from our school improvement team has been put in charge of this indicator. We have it that will be completed with this by the end of this year. And very important here, notice that this one's filled out, so I want to make a case about what should go in this box. The point of this text box, which is always the hardest text box for schools to fill out, is to, like I said earlier, to actually talk about where you're heading with this. What is it that you're trying to achieve at the school? What exactly do you as a team feel is full implementation? So what is your definition of full implementation? Of course, remember that all these indicators have the Wise Ways document that you're able to look at. That's the research document that every indicator has. And some of these actually have a video connected to them, indicator in action video. But that is what you are writing here. It's exactly where you're hoping to go with this. And at the same time, the part that a lot of schools forget is there is a second sentence here that says, please provide that evidence. So start thinking about what are those artifacts, those documents that you're going to create to prove to your district office, to your board, that you've definitely have completed this, that you have reached full implementation. The reason for the box is because if we think with the end in mind, then creating these action steps is a lot easier. And that's why the box is right before the action steps, because the researchers behind NC STAR, INDUS-STAR wanted you to think with the end in mind. If I know exactly where I'm going, I know then, and I know exactly what are the artifacts I need to produce, then writing the action steps becomes a lot easier. With that said, clearly here I have 2 things that are past due. In this case, like we said, we had Justin, who's responsible for it. Justin might talk to Donna. Donna might say, oh, I thought I could do this by December 15th, but this is taking way longer than I expected. Can we extend this to February 15th? And Justin would bring that information back to the team. We would have a conversation about it. And then we say, yes, let's give Donna that extension. We go ahead and change the date to February 15th. Actually, I should have changed the year as well. And there we go. And it moves it to the bottom because this is in order of dates. And we go ahead and Justin says, well, I completed mine. I have the evidence. Let me go ahead and mark that one completed. We can say we did that one on January 25th. And you can do that. I mean, you can change dates. You can actually go in there and edit the action step. For example, it now says action step number 2 here. You can change what actually Donna was responsible for. Maybe Donna has a new idea for this. Maybe that's why we needed the 2-month extension. So you can actually retype what the action step is. You can delete the action step if it's something that's no longer necessary to do. I'm going to go ahead and click save here. What's important, though, to realize is that when it comes to changing of dates, I always tell schools and districts, I think the first year and a half, it's okay. Because in reality, when schools get in the system, they'll try to solve world peace in 4 months. Because they get so into it, the discussions start happening, and we start saying, yeah, let's get this done by June, and then June comes around, and we're like, we need more time with this. Again, that's because it's a new tool, it's a new software they're using. After a year and a half, you got to stick to those dates. because if we are constantly changing dates in the plan, then we're never going to accomplish anything at the school. So it's very, very important that we try to keep these promises, try to keep these dates, these deadlines that we've established for ourselves. Once you're good with that, and if you go ahead and mark this last one completed, I'm just going to show you what happens. So let's just say Donna accomplished this. Then automatically we get this pop-up. And the pop-up basically is telling us we completed every action step we promised. Do I want to add more action steps to this because we don't feel we're done yet? Or do I feel, yeah, we completed this perfectly, we're exactly where we want to be, evidence can be provided. If I were to say more action steps are needed, then it would save this and it would automatically tell me, hey, by the way, actions are still needed here because that's exactly what we informed the system about. And you would go down below and add actions. Let me show you what that looks like in the actual workstation area and that success cycle area. You actually here, you see it's 100% completed, but you've actually told the system we're adding action steps still, so it doesn't have a completion date mark on it, and that's what that shows. With that said, we always get asked questions about the indicators and what's my timeline, all so on and so forth. So I do want you to see what's happened here. So there were 12 key indicators. Several of them, we actually marked them as fully implemented from the very beginning. So there were 4 at this school that we said, yes, we're good with these. We know these practices are in place. For example, in this case, we're saying that our principal is an instructional leader and he or she monitors curriculum instruction. If that's the case, then you mark it fully implemented, and of course you go to document upload and you provide the evidence for that. Now remember that document upload, you can easily create folders for each of the indicators. My recommendation is always that you just, I'm big on Google, and I know a lot of schools are as well, with Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Forms, all those things. I would just create those same exact folders in my Google Drive and link directly from Google Drive to here. And you actually do that, like I've shown in earlier videos, by simply, instead of choosing the file from your computer, linking to your Google Drive folder or Google Doc. All you have to do is copy and paste that URL. But let me go back to where I was at success cycle. So we've marked a couple of them as fully implemented. There was one here that we actually worked on for a little bit, which was making sure we're having those 2 meetings a month that NC STAR requires. But we took care of that right away, and now it's completed. But when you look at the other indicators, the other key indicators we have in our plan, yes, everything has action steps on it. But if we look, 2018, 2020, 2017, 2019. So our target dates for completion, because these are target dates, are spread out in 3 years, really. So I'm basically creating that map, and I'm showing my district and my board that, yes, we agree that this is not at where it needs to be at the school, and this is the plan on how we're going to get there. This is exactly the roadmap that we're going to follow. That's why it's important to assess them, and that's why it's important to start creating those action steps and that map. But it does not mean that all of these have to be done in a year. You clearly are seeing here how the plan starts evolving. With that said, let me go ahead and show you this one down here at the bottom, E106. We got 5 action steps in there. We want to monitor this one in today's meeting, for example. We go in there and we start looking at these action steps. And in this case, who's responsible? Jessica Johnson is responsible for this. Jessica stands up in her meeting and starts telling us what she has discovered from conversations with Jennifer, with John, with Melissa, with Jason, and with Caroline. And the first action step here was basically creating that parent-school handbook to make sure everyone's informed of what we expect at our school. And Jennifer took care of that right away, and we basically have the evidence to prove that. We just go ahead and mark that one completed pretty quickly. But now there's these 4 action steps that we're working on. In fact, all 4 of these are recurring, well, 3 of these are recurring tasks. One of them is not, but we said it would be done by the end of the year. Anytime you have recurring tasks, our recommendation is constantly put the end of the year, because you do not want to mark an action step that's recurring as completed until you all feel strongly that this is now systemic, that this is now part of our school. It's ingrained in the activities that we do. It's ingrained in our culture, whatever the actual action step says. In this case, it's something simpler. It has to do with making sure our grade teams are sending out those informative newsletters to our parents and guardians that contain those strategies, that curriculum information, those resources that they can go to. And we actually broke this action step down by grade level. So you can do that. You can have action steps that break down by grade level because you want to be very specific that each grade does this when you have your conversations. Or you can have action steps that say all teachers will do something. All teachers will create websites. But basically how it works then is that, in this case, Jessica will get up in front of us and basically tell us how John and the first grade team are doing. And she'll probably say, John and the first grade team have done really good work. However, I don't feel comfortable yet that we should mark this as completed. There are certain things that some newsletters need some additional information. So we go ahead and say, great, but we don't mark it as completed yet. We're still waiting for John and that first grade team to give us exactly the type of newsletters we want. And then Melissa and the second grade team have done phenomenal work. Parents are loving the newsletters. We actually got great responses in a survey that we sent home. So we go ahead and say, yeah, Melissa and the team are going to continue to do a great job with this. And we go ahead and mark this as completed. Jason, curriculum nights. We've had 2 of them so far. They were excellent. Unfortunately, we did not get the parent attendance that we wanted. We're still working on that parental attendance piece when it comes to this curriculum nights. So maybe we don't mark that completed. We want to start developing maybe some more ideas and help Jason out. How do we get more parents to come to them? Because clearly the content he's showing is exactly what we want. And then finally we get to Caroline Harris here. And Caroline tells us, this all teacher action step is a little hard to monitor. Because I'll be honest, I got some teachers that have created phenomenal websites, but some are still, they're lacking. I mean, the websites don't contain the enrichment strategies and the remediation strategies that we want. So we decide as a team, okay, we're going to change this action step, and we're going to say, it's a high school, for example, and we're going to say the math department will create websites. And then we go ahead and add the other departments, and we say the same thing. The science department, we're actually going to give this to each department head to be responsible for. I'm just going to say John Smith. Say the end of the year. So now we start breaking this down by groups, and maybe it's easier for us now to have the conversation because we have these now groups that have been created. So that's how you would monitor an actual indicator and all the action steps that we wrote in there. As I showed you earlier, let me just show you real quick with, for example, the one I said that was really quick was marked as fully implemented. So basically this was just about having those 2 meetings every month. We had a simple action step here, which is basically creating that calendar to make sure everyone's aware of the 2 dates we're having those meetings. Jason Jackson took care of that. That was done quickly, and we actually marked it completed. Now, remember when it gave you those 2 options as soon as I marked it completed? Let me just show you. I'm going to go open this up again. I'm going to mark it completed, and it gives you these 2 options right here. Now, if in the previous example I said that we needed more action steps, but now I'm going to go ahead and say we are good with this. And these are the 3 boxes that now pop up. And I've already written information in these, which is why you see them full. But basically you now have to explain to NC Star, and your district will read this, and your board would read these as well. What the experience was like, how did the school grow in terms of doing this? How are you going to sustain this practice and this effort of those 2 meetings every month? And then finally, the last one is, what evidence will you be providing? So once you've done that, you save it. Now just as I said earlier, understand that whatever you write in those boxes is public, is readable in the plan, and I'll show you that when we go into a report section. The last thing I wanted to show you in this area, before I show you another little technique, is going back to what we were talking about, like for example the newsletters. So John and the first grade team, we didn't mark them as completed, but you still want the public maybe to know that John and the first team are doing some good work or are actually working on this. So what some schools like to do is they'll click on the action step, and there's a notes section down here where you can put any additional information for the public, for your board, for your district office to read. So that when I actually read the plan, I see that it's not marked completed, but I can read that work is happening. It's just we're not comfortable yet to mark that as a completed action step. So that little notes section is always available. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, with regards to, for example, indicators that I've marked are going to be done in 3 years. Now, as you know, in NC STAR, you do have 105 indicators to pick from, to choose from. And a lot of schools are still afraid to go look at that 105 list. But in reality, the 105 has been created to help you. So, because when you look at key indicators like this one, where we talk about standard aligned units of instruction, that is a hard, tough, long indicator, which is why we said that Denzel will take care of this by 2020. Now, when I open this up and I read what we've written, basically current implementation, and we assessed this last year because I see the year. We were saying that last year we had instructional units for reading, but we're working on creating those instructional units for math, science, and social studies. So with that said, we basically, like I said, had our deadline, our limit of 2020-21 for this, by our target date for this to be done by. And we basically right here, we're going to have instructional units by then. Since this will take us a few years to accomplish, we have included in the plan indicators A205, A207, and A211. Now, those are not key indicators, but we have looked at the list of 105 and have looked at all those indicators in there to say these are little subsets that can help us get to completion of this by 2020. Now, how do you put these into your plan? That's always a question that I get. So I'm going to go here to set direction, which is where this is done. In set direction, remember box number 1 is about where you write your vision statement, your values, your mission, your goals. And remember that anything you type here goes at the very front of the plan. So anything I type here will go to the very front of the plan. The goals section is where schools write their typical SMART goals, their proficiency goals. I'm going to raise EOC scores by this much, EOG scores by that much. I'm going to meet growth this year, exceed growth, raise attendance by that much, drop discipline suspensions by this much, so on and so forth. But where I want to go with this is indicator selection. So in indicator selection is where I have all 105 indicators. If you haven't noticed, these are broken down by dimensions already for you, and they're organized into buckets. So when it comes to standard aligned units of instruction, I'm definitely looking at curriculum and instructional alignment. So if I click on that, it opens up all the indicators that have to do with curriculum and instructional alignment. And here's that key indicator that's we said we'll do by 2020, and there's all these other indicators that I can add to help me. So we said we're going to do A205 because A205 has to do, let's make sure at least our teachers have weekly lesson plans. Let's take care of that one first. And let's make sure we're definitely tackling vocabulary development because we have a lot of poverty, children of poverty that come to our schools, and vocabulary development is definitely needed. And then last but not least, we want to make sure our teachers are using rubrics so that students know exactly what's expected of them. They know exactly what an A is, what a B is, and every assignment, every project we do in our school has some type of rubric attached to it. So I'm going to do A211 as well. So when I've done that, all of these have turned green and they've been added. I can go back to my success cycle and I see them right there. And they've been added underneath A2 because A is that dimension that has to do with instructional excellence. So it works out great. Now I had done some work previously before recording the video, and you can see how I've basically arranged my work. This school year, At this school, we're going to focus on those weekly lesson plans and that vocabulary development. Next school year, the making sure we have those rubrics going. And then by 2020, because we did all this work, those instructional units will be ready. So that's how we start really mapping our work, really using that set list of 105 indicators to show exactly our board and our district office where we're going with this. With that said, I do want to show you one last thing in the reports section, just show you a couple reports if you hadn't noticed. The comprehensive report obviously is the entire plan, but I do want to show you two other reports that maybe you haven't touched on. As a principal, I would constantly look at the actions report. The actions report basically tells me all the action steps that are in my plan. So if I want to actually sort this out by name, I could do that by clicking on these arrows. It does it alphabetical order, first name. There we go, and I can see what's been marked as completed. If I want to actually sort this out by target date, like when is all this stuff due, I just click on that. I see these have all been marked completed, which is exactly what I want, and then the next thing is due in April, and the following one is due in May. So I definitely keep an eye on the actions report, see what's happening there. Remember that any of these reports you can export as an Excel spreadsheet, a PDF, or a Word file. I'm going to go ahead and close this. The last report I'll show you to finish this video is to celebrate our success. This is a small report that shows you everything you've completed so far. So if district office wanted to, they could actually print these out for every school. You can also, as a principal, print this out for your faculty. And that's the importance of adding those little indicators in the 105, because as you start achieving all these little indicators, they'll show up as our success stories, and so that people can see that we are definitely moving in the right direction as a school. I'm going to go ahead and close this, taking us back to the home screen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and the recording has helped. Again, I'm always available if you have any questions. Take care. Have a great day.